I'll just start this one.
When you look at the world map, it's immediately obvious how many continents there are and which countries belong to which ones.
No, it isn't.
That's right, that's why we're doing an episode about it. Welcome to Map Men.
We're the men.
And here's the map.
Perfect. In the last Jay Foreman video I watched, I mentioned that the amount of continents that you're taught that there are may just depend entirely on the country that you're from, because there is seemingly no strict international standard for that or consensus. But in the comment section of that video, besides the people arguing about whether there were 4, 5, 6, or 7 continents, I saw mention that Mapman had already covered the subject, so I'm circling back to that. And if you didn't catch that last video, I'll link it for you in the description.
All British primary schools rated at least satisfactory by Ofsted will teach their children that there are 7 continents: Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, Antarctica, North America, and South America.
But other countries' curriculums beg to differ. In parts of Europe, they teach just 6 continents.
In Russia and Japan, they teach a different 6 continents.
And in South America, they teach just 5 continents.
So who should we believe?
Whom should we believe?
Exactly.
The most common definition of a continent is a large continuous landmass separated by oceans.
I like that definition. It's exactly how I imagine a continent.
Good for you, Mark. Now take a look at a world map and tell me how many large continuous landmasses are separated by ocean.
Great. Australia,
1.
North
That'd
America,
only be 4.
It's attached to South America.
but the Panama Canal.
Is man-made and definitely not an ocean.
Point taken. So all of America,
2.
Antarctica,
3.
Africa.
Africa is only separated from Eurasia by another man-made canal, the Suez, so it doesn't fit the definition.
I see. So Afro-Eurasia.
Congratulations!
So according to the most common definition, there should only be 4 continents.
Also, the largest of these, Afro-Eurasia, contains 86% of the world's population, making it a useless distinction.
I don't like this definition anymore.
Neither do I. So can we instead use another, more sciencey definition?
We can. The reason the Earth's land masses are as spread out as they are is because the tectonic plates that make up the Earth's crust have moved them apart over time, and using the major tectonic plates as our guide to the continents, we get a more even distribution of where they are.
Tectonically speaking, North America is separate from South America, Africa is separate from Eurasia, and Antarctica and Australia are separate from everything. Nice and simple.
But on closer inspection, this tectonic definition also has some major issues.
For example, Australia. The country of Australia is this bit.
But the tectonic plate, also called Australia, includes Australia and a bit of New Zealand, and half of the island of Papua, which includes both Papua New Guinea and the province of Papua, which is in Indonesia, which is in Asia.
Which is confusing. So to avoid this country-continent muddle, other names for this continent do exist, including Sahul, Meganesia, and Australinia.
Not to be confused with Australasia, an increasingly unfashionable term describing Australia and New Zealand and some but not all of the Pacific Islands, so we're not going to mention it again.
2 of those words were absolutely new to me. I've only heard Australinia.
So then, what continent does New Zealand belong to? By
Oceania.
both our definitions so far, none.
Good for New Zealand. What's wrong with not belonging to any continent?
Not being able to take part in the Olympics. Because this famous 4-yearly competition to see who can host the best fireworks display is open to every country in the world, its 5 continental rings must somehow include them all.
Each ring represents a different continent. There's Europe, America, Africa, Asia.
And this one represents a broad region including Australia, New Zealand, as well as the Micro-Mela and Polynesian countries known as Oceania.
Oceania, its very name meaning the opposite of continent, is not considered one by any strict definition, but it's a popular term, especially for the purpose of making sure no country misses out on being incontinent. Only Antarctica
That was a
doesn't
good
get an
one.
Olympic ring because it's too cold to host a fireworks display.
And they also don't have permanent residents, right? Just the researchers. I don't even think most of them are there long term, which makes sense. I mean, I wouldn't want to live there. But back to Oceania, I know some people referred to Oceania as the region, but for example, in Latin America, many countries call the continent Oceania. And I know that's the case for some other countries as well. I mean, I've had professors referring to the continent as Australia or Oceania, depending on what country we're in. So maybe that's just another one that depends on where you're from. I don't know. Write down what you were taught to call it, and then what country taught you that.
The tectonic and Olympic approaches could be easily combined, including both Antarctica and Oceania, giving us a nice problem-free 6 continents.
Except it's not problem-free at all. We need to talk about Europe.
Whether part of a landmass or a tectonic plate, Europe appears to be nothing more than a glorified Asian peninsula. So, what actually is Europe?
Can it really be possible that the home of the continental breakfast isn't even a continent at all? And if so, what do we call that breakfast other than disappointing?
Which brings us to a third element to consider in the
Always.
definition of a continent: culture. Knowing which continent a country's in immediately tells you something about what it's like.
And because Norway has more in common with Sweden when it comes to language, religion, ethnicity and
The
favourite
Nordics.
cutlery than it does with, say, Vietnam, a line is helpfully drawn here, breaking Eurasia up into 2 bits. But complicated culture can't be conveniently cut into clear categories.
Some countries cause tremendous headaches for this dividing line.
First, Armenia, a country which, with a 95% Christian population, arguably falls in the Europe category, but geographically belongs to Asia. And speaking as someone who's a 32nd Armenian, where do you think these eyebrows come from, I can confirm I have no idea what continent it should be in.
The
He
second
does have
problem
nice
country
eyebrows.
is Turkey, which incessantly prides itself on being an Asian-European hybrid.
Food,
Asia,
trading partners,
Europe,
religion,
Asia,
writing system.
Europe.
This leaves the dividing line with no option but to split Turkey's largest city, Istanbul, straight down the middle, misleadingly suggesting that the populations either side of the Straits of Bosphorus are somehow totally different from one another.
One way of solving the problem of where the line goes is to insist that it doesn't exist.
Which is the approach taken by Russia, which should come as no surprise because it's in Russia's interest to view Eurasia as a single continent.
If it's divided, that might make people think they're different from each other.
And when people think they're different, they like to talk about things like independence.
To make matters messier, some European countries have significant territories in other continents. The largest part of Denmark is officially in North America.
And France, with dozens of overseas territories, has put bits of Europe in Africa, Oceania, both Americas and Antarctica.
Perhaps the best example of the difficulty of pinning down what is and isn't Europe can be found in the insufferable Eurovision Song Contest.
Insufferably fabulous. In its first year, just 7 very European countries took to the stage. Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Switzerland and West Germany.
Oh, well, it's huge
But with
now.
more countries wanting to get in on the pop-tastic action, this quickly expanded, adding transcontinental Russia, dubiously European Georgia, Asia's Israel, Africa's Morocco, eventually giving up the geographical facade altogether with Australia's Australia.
What Eurovision demonstrates quite well is that continents are all about politics.
Every continent now has some form of political and economic union. There's Mercosur, the African Union, ASEAN, and of course the EU.
But these organisations are rarely drawn on the same lines as the continents themselves. Despite the number of people who confused Britain leaving the EU with Britain leaving Europe, it remains something which, tectonically speaking, we can't actually have a referendum on. The underlying question in all of this is, why does it matter how many continents there are? Should we even care which one we belong to?
Well, no, not really. What the continents really represent is a human desire to use broad generalisations to categorise the world into arbitrary subdivisions.
So whether it's 7, 5
That's
or
deep.
even 6 continents, these subdivisions will remain as useful as they are argued about.
Are you really a 32nd Armenian?
Yes.
Because I'm a 23rd Hawaiian.
Are you really?
No.
Okay, so the answer is still a bit of depends on who you ask. That and it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, which is what I took out of this video. But I like that they went through each of the ways that continents could be divided, right? Landmass, tectonic plates, what was the other one? Olympic rings. Culture and politics makes the most sense to me at this point. But I'll make sure to link this video and the channel in the description. And if you're unfamiliar with the Jay Foreman channel, I highly recommend it. Of the 3 or 4 videos I've seen from them so far, each has been a mix of comedy, history, and some linguistics as well. If you know another channel that touches on linguistics, please tell me. Also, they mentioned the Straits of Bosphorus, which made me want to watch something on the Ottoman Empire. So if you have any ideas, let me know. But other than that, just leave your thoughts on continents. And I'll skip to the book recommendation. It's going to be an easy one today. I've been reading Evelyn Waugh. First, I started with Decline and Fall, and then I stumbled upon this narrated version of Brideshead Revisited by Jeremy Irons. I'm going to put him in the top 5 narrators at this point. Like David Attenborough, who else? Brian Cox, Morgan Freeman, Earl Nightingale, now Jeremy Irons. But it's free here on YouTube, so you're going to find that linked in the description. And Brideshead Revisited, it's a story about Charles. He's the protagonist. He has some sort of infatuation with his schoolmate Sebastian, and then he grows infatuated with Sebastian's family and their aristocratic lifestyle. But it's set between both of the world wars, and I would say that book is a classic. Over the years, there have been quite a few adaptations, both in series and film. More recently, the film Saltburn has some of the same underlying themes. If you've seen that, leave your thoughts. But for the music recommendation, a song used in that movie was Pulp's Common People. Another song with a great video clip. And I think that music video is something ahead of its time. It must have been released in the 90s. And Pulp, Blur, what genre of music are these? British pop rock? So that's the first recommendation. And then for a song without lyrics, there's a DJ called Patrick Holland. He's from Canada, I believe. He's mixing jazz, instrumentals, and electronic. The song I recommend to you is Morning Shift. If you listen to it, tell me if you like it. That's really all from me. This was a short one today. So thank you for watching with me, and I'll just catch you in the next video.